everyone. What's up and welcome back to Pro Pels Talk episode 76, presented to you by Boo Crew Media and Company Burger, the best burger in the city, located at 4300 Ferret Street. We have an absolutely loaded show today, as I'm joined by the Rattler brothers, Raph and Garrick of Pels Pod, and also joined, as always, by Elliot Clough of Pelicans Plus. And before we got onto this stream, we had talked about we're going to be positive, but we have to talk a little bit about the negativity surrounding this team right now. So we're going to talk about, we're going to go from Elliot to Raph to Garrick. Right off the bat, Zion and Griffin, that there is clearly something going on here. Now, the piano man, that's very odd, and that's a 18-year-old, but it seems, Elliot, since day one, there's been a problem. And going into this season, it being year 3 of Zion and Griff, this is a very big year for David Griffin. This cannot be what he wanted to start camp.
Oh, hell no. No, hell no, not at all. And that's just, I mean, it's been the last 2.5 years. I mean, Christian's article wrapped it up incredibly well. Timing with everything and that article, coming out isn't the greatest for the organization at all, obviously. But I tweeted this out probably the day of the article came out. And I said, Griff, you've been in the league for how long? You've been in a bunch of front offices. Just talk to the guy. Don't play the fucking piano. This isn't hard. It's just. And Jake said it on the roundtable we did a couple days ago, where he said, "Just be a human being."
Yeah.
That's all you got to do. That's what Willie Green's good at. And I know we're going to talk about Willie Green and be positive in that sense, but this shouldn't be so freaking hard. You don't have to be this upper echelon genius and think you're running the whole thing from top to bottom. Just do your job. Do your job.
And Raph, he said something interesting there, just communicating. Do you think that's a problem between these two right now? Just simple communication?
Yeah, I think it's very similar to what happened with Stan Van Gundy, right? So you come in, you've got an older coach from a different generation, different way of communicating, where you're now talking to a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old, 21-year-old, 22-year-old. You sitting down to play the piano is not going to resonate well with guys that turn on their phone. They're listening to the baby. That's not the same conversation, right? Your lines of communication are completely crossed. And so, to your point, Elliot, you're doing too much. No one's asking for our GM to be best friends with our superstar, right? Put teams, do your job, be competent in terms of what you're putting together as far as a roster. When you take a sit back and say, does that make sense? Don't walk away and walk into the season and be like, yeah, Eric Bledsoe is our starting shooting guard. That doesn't make sense, right? And so, there's been some good and bad with Griffin's tenure. He's done great in terms of player recruitment from a drafting standpoint, but the free agency, the mesh between the team, the coaching, a lot of the moves are just head scratchers in a lot of ways. And so, going into the season, all that aside, it was show up or show up time for Griffin anyway. If the team didn't perform anyway, he was probably on his way out. And now it's just added emphasis. So, that's where I'm at with it.
Garrick.
Yeah, no, it's Griff has a lot of Kanye in him, right? So he has this weird genius thing going on where he thinks that, he's like Jedi mind tricking you into, doing all of these different things. When in reality, that's not what we need. The Zion is from Kim coming into this, to the organization and the draft time and all of that, you got this salt of the earth kind of kid going on, right? And so, technically, Zion out of his mouth has not said anything, right? So to have Griff come in there and kind of serenading him with the piano, I thought it was satire at first. I was like, there's no way that this is real. But those are the type of things that when you have this kind of power, and I don't want to say it's a complex, it's more of this is the way things have been, and this is the situations that I have been in, and it's kind of a little bit of this is the way, my way. And so you have this kind of going on, and as what Raph was saying, you got these kids in there, man. These kids who are multimillionaires. You heard a lot about, the things that Mark Jackson would do that the players kind of didn't really gel with. It wasn't so much him as a person and the things that he did, but just his antics and the way he went about doing things that those players kind of was like, and that's kind of why Mark is still being a little, blackballed from the league. But you see a lot of that with Griffin and when Christian dropped this article, like Elliot was saying and Raph was saying, this was already a big year for the franchise coming up, especially for David Griffin, especially with kind of the things like people are starting to question, like, these words that you're giving out in this presser page that you run in this burner presser page that Griff is running. Those words are incredible, but I mean, what are some of the things that we can put on paper and some of the tangible things that we can see? So, right. It's like that.
And Garrick, I want to talk about that point because that's what pisses me off as a fan. Listen, I know basketball. I've played for 30 years. I've coached it now for 9. I know what's going on, and most of this fan base knows what's going on. The way he handles his press conference is like he's kind of talking down on us, like we don't understand what's going on, right?
Right.
Can you just talk to us like a human being, which clearly he can't do? Maybe he can play the piano in press conferences. I'm just thinking to the point of, can you just communicate? And it seems like he has a problem communicating not only in the press conferences, but to his players as well. I think he's so worried about the way people think about him instead of just trying to win basketball games. That's where all this bullshit's coming in, and there's more stuff behind the scenes I'm sure going to start leaking out here sooner or later. Mm-hmm. But now you're starting to see, leaks are starting to come out in multiple places now, right, Elliot? Mm-hmm. Like, this isn't a tight ship anymore. Like, there's no doubt in my mind either Chris Finch or Alvin Gentry's camp said something about the piano because that had been held in for a very, very and only so many people. Now, remember, this is the bubble. So not a lot of people had access, especially media members. Not a lot of people had access to that piano. So, Elliot, a lot of leaks coming out now. This is just not a good situation.
Not at all. It's got to be that camp, right? And maybe Chris Finch is like he knew the story was going to drop about Rosas, and he tried to get in there before.
Burn it all down.
Hey, it's a possibility.
Right.
And just to add to what Raph, Garrick, and you're saying, Justin, it's just saying one thing and doing another. Yeah. There's this narrative of family. Well, you got 3 coaches in 3 years. You got a complete roster overhaul every single offseason. That doesn't look like a family to me. Right. I mean, it's like you said, the talking down, like if you were to read a page one letter at a time, like all that bullshit.
Yeah, it's like we're stupid or something. Like we're not fucking stupid.
Emperor Palpatine speaking to us.
We're in a press conference. Like, I want answers. Like his Stan Van Gundy description of why he fired him is like he fired him because he fucking sucked. Okay, let's move on.
The flowery words, brother. The words. He's a master with words, man. And
he's got the professional gift of gab. Yes. So essentially, he's able to mansplain, griff-splain, anything to make it seem like it's a positive thing. But most basketball fans can see through that and be like, bro, what are you talking about? But from the casual fan, I'm like, oh, nothing's wrong with the Pelicans. And so I think that's his type of approach, which you could see how, again, these 20-year-olds are like, man, don't talk to us like that. We're not stupid. Like, we get it, right? And so I think that's the disconnect right now. And so what I would like to see him do is kind of just get away from the media. Stop talking. Just start making moves, putting people in place, move Josh Hart at the deadline, get us some more shooters in here, and just stop talking. Let them play. Let Willie Green run the team. You be a GM and go sit up there.
And to wrap it all up, sorry, Justin, it's been 2.5 years, and this dude was given everything. Like after the Anthony Davis trade, he was handed a platter of young players, ton of picks. And, he had to trade a first-round pick to get Steven Adams, now had to trade a first pick to get rid of Steven Adams, traded a first pick to get Devontae Graham. And, and Garrick, you said it. Raph, you said it. One of you guys said it. The offseason was pretty good with the moves, I thought. I liked Jonas. I liked Devontae. Maybe not how they were acquired, but I think they're a lot better fits than what this roster had last year. But he has to make up for the mistakes that he already made. That's the shitty part.
Yeah, and I think Raph said it too. He's drafted well. Maybe it was you, Garrett, but he's drafted well. He has. Like, Kyrie Lewis is not. Look, he's not there yet, but Trey Murphy's been looking nice. Naw's looking nice. And from what we have heard, Jackson Hayes has been really, really good in training camp. So that's good. And Garrick, I'm gonna start with you here because I want to start talking basketball. I'm so sick and tired of talking about fucking Zion.
As the world turns, as the Pels turn, man.
Yeah.
Right. So let's start talking basketball. Garrick, I'll start with you here. A lot has been debated. Your 5, 4, and 3 are pretty set in stone with JV, Zion, and BI. Now, kind of the debate here is who's going to be your 1 and 2 moving forward. And I'm interested to hear, who's the point guard, who's going to be your shooting guard to start the season.
Well, to start the season, I would venture to bet that it's going to be, it's going to be either Nickeil Alexander-Walker at your point guard or shooting guard, Devontae Graham. Doesn't really matter where, those guys are it's just your backcourt. However, and Raph and I have talked about this extensively off the pod as well as on the pod. On Nickeil and Brandon Ingram's birthday, I tweeted happy birthday to my backcourt. And I think that there is something there with the Nickeil backcourt, Nickeil and Brandon Ingram backcourt, along with Trey Murphy, Zion, and Jonas, or Jackson, or whoever's playing at that point in time. I think that is a very it's a very fluid and very flexible lineup. I think that, Brandon Ingram has to get better defensively, obviously. Guarding quicker two guards may be an issue for him. But I don't think that there's a lot of two guards that could take advantage of Brandon Ingram just simply because of his length and everything. But Raph knows that Naw, BI, Trey, Zion, either JV or Jackson lineup, that is the lineup that I think either will close games or will be eventually going to be a major lineup soon, just because Devontae Graham is so good at getting buckets and scoring that I think that if you bring him off the bench, that you give him the keys to score, and he doesn't have to worry about getting Zion involved, getting Brandon Ingram involved. Is Jonas eating? Is JV eating? I think if you just sub him in kind of like a Jordan Clarkson type role where you just come in and like, hey, the bucket is there, go get him. I think that helps bolster the bench, and it kind of balances out all of the defensive minded guys you have on the bench, like a Najee, like a Didi, like players like that, Herb, and all of those players. So I think if you can find a way to get those 5 on the court, I think that's the best possible lineup for the Pelicans. And
something to piggyback your comment, I'll go to you here, Elliot, and then Raph. How long is that team that's starting 5 with Naw? Yeah, Trey. I mean, that is
they could stand on each side of the paint and each side of the wing and touch each other if they if they spread out each other's arms. So yeah, absolutely.
Because what's starting to become a thing now in the NBA is zone defense. Like now I know it's not being played 10, 15 minutes a game, but like there are certain points in a game, right, where you need to stop or something like that to turn the momentum.
Miami plays heavy zone. Yeah. They went zone against Milwaukee in the regular season both times and beat them. And then they went zone. I remember there was a game that they were down about 15. They went zone and it against the 76ers and then beat the Sixers by like 20 because they just couldn't crack the zone. I think like you said, with those wingspans, that's the wave, man.
Yeah, Elliot, who do you see as your? We know 3, 4, 5. Who do you see as your backcourt?
Well, to add to the length thing, on top of having Trey Murphy and BI on the floor, you got Najee Marshall and you got Herb Jones on the bench. So it depends on how ready Herb Jones is, but we know Najee is ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Last season in the summer league, but in terms of the 1 and 2, to me, I think a lot of people are in the same boat. We don't have to have it figured out now at all. Like there's a lot of different ways it can go. The way I lean is Devontae and Naw, just because I think that pairing would work really well together in terms of perimeter defense. Naw can guard opposing, point guards and shooting guards, depending on who if he wants to be the point of attack defender. Devontae, you're going to have to hide him defensively. You just
absolutely.
That's just what you got to do. And to have Naw out there on top of that is really a positive. If it's those 5, Naw is clearly the best defender, though. That's where you're going to run into some issues if you're starting on that way. You're just going to have to outscore people when you first with that starting lineup. But in terms of if you want to switch it up, I mean, honestly, a lot of people haven't talked about this, but I would be kind of interested in Tomas starting, Sato starting from here, here and there, just because he's a facilitator. He wants to make other guys better. And when you got a ton of scorers out there on the floor, I mean, I really think he's going to take a leap this year. I think a lot of people do. Bi, Zion, and Jonas can eat, man. Jonas can eat.
That's the slept on, bro. I call him the run game in the fourth quarter. Just hand it all. HB guys.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And Sato, from what I've been told, I don't even know this guy's last name because it's so long. Mark K. He's Australian. He hosts the Bulls HQ pod. Has a bunch of followers on Twitter. But I had him on to talk about Sato. I had him on to talk about Garrett Temple a couple weeks ago. And he said Sato's a pretty, good enough team defender. He's going to make your team better. He's not going to make a ton of mistakes. He's a floor raiser, not necessarily a ceiling raiser. And we've got a team with a bunch of young guys. And after what we saw from last year, I'm A-okay with having a floor raiser for sure. And I'm not necessarily saying day one start Sato, but if it's a situation where you're like, okay, let's bring Devontae off the bench to be a scoring punch, and run that second unit. Sato could be a really good fit amongst those guys. And I'd like to see maybe by the end of the year, we see Trey start and move, BI to the 2, Zion to the 3. And, I don't want Nickeil Alexander-Walker to be the primary ball handler. He said it himself. He is the 2. If you can put the ball in his hands to initiate possessions here and there. And I think, it can be a run by committee kind of thing at the 1, because you got Point Zion. BI, was iffy with starting possessions last year. Kyra off the bench, from time to time, and then Devontae too. So, and then Sato. So there's a lot of different ways they can go.
So Raph, 3, 4, 5 are set. Who's your backcourt?
Sure. So I'm with Garrick in a lot of ways. I would love to see and Bi be that backcourt with Trey at the 4. But if that's not realistic, honestly, I do not want Devontae to start. Not because I don't want him to have the minutes, just because I love him in that role of scorer off the bench. Like a Lou Wilt, like you have free reign. Don't let the offense get in these clunks where either BI or Zion are sitting down and we have no idea how to score in the half court. Like, be that facilitator, be that person that brings that energy, who's able to get their own bucket and to set people up. He's a very underrated playmaker in the pick and roll. And so if BI is down or Zion's down, he's going to be able to get buckets for himself and for other people's as well. And so I think he has that ability more so than anybody else on our bench. And so if he sits down, if Trey's not ready to start, I'm looking at either Najee or Josh Hart. And because to your point earlier, if Devontae's starting, Nola is your only defender in your starting 5. And so I want another person in there to supplement, because with BI, Nola, and Zion, you're going to get enough buckets up. That's not going to be the problem. Scoring is not going to be the issue. And JV, both of them are, Josh Hart had a down year shooting the 3. I tend to lean Najee more than Josh Hart, but one of them got 12 million, right? So one of them has to get traded at the deadline. So if that's the case, right, I need another guy who's going to play defense and can hit an open 3. So then when I go back to my bench, I've got someone who's going to keep the offense flowing, keep the offense going. I do think Zato's going to be in the rotation, but I want him in that second unit to kind of supplement those other guys more so than be the main facilitator.
And we're going to talk. By the way, all 3 great points. We're going to talk more about Brandon Ingram, because I do think defensively he has to take that step, right?
No doubt.
We're not going to be shit unless Zion and BI put up defensively.
Absolutely.
So it's not that hard, and BI has all the tools to do so. But it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And, we can say all these starting 5s and all this different kind of stuff. It really doesn't matter. It's the NBA. You're going to go on runs throughout the entire game. The problem this team has had for 2 straight years is closing games. Every year it's, well, who's our closer? Who's our closer? Who's our closer? Well, it's Zion. Well, it's Brandon. This is the problem. You got to surround Zion. You got to go bully ball you got to go small ball. Surround Zion with 4 shooters, and then that's it. You then take your matchup. So I would love to see in a closing group, Najee, BI, Trey, and Zion. You put Trey at the 4. You go BI, Najee, no, you switch 1 through 5. Just switch 1 through 5, deal with it. And then you surround Zion with technically 4 really, really good, not really, really good, but good enough shooters to knock down an open 3. And that's just been the problem the last 2 years, is that these teams in the last 5 minutes just clog the lane and make life hell for BI and Zion. Because here's the thing, we don't make it easy for BI. I mean, if you look at the film, if you watch the last 5 minutes of the game, look at just everybody, weak side help, just all the way over as far as possible. And there's no driving lanes for Brandon Ingram, because lately you had like a Josh Hart closing the game, who in essence, like Raph, he's a 31% 3-point shooter. Like,
yeah,
that's
not good.
Blowout.
That's not good.
You had Eric Bledsoe. Like, he was, we all knew, like, he was dog shit. Like,
the Pelicans played 2.5 on 5 every single game, and half was either Lonzo was hitting or he wasn't.
Right.
And if he
no
was
in between,
there was no in between. Right. And if he was hitting, you got that 0.5. But like you said, everybody else was clogged into the lane. And if I'm not looking at in the fourth quarter, if I'm not even paying attention to Steven Adams and Eric Bledsoe, and if Lonzo is having a bad game, then there is 2, 4, 6, at least 8 pair of eyes on Zion and Brandon Ingram every time they dribble the ball. And that's why just to kind of go a little bit, that's why I was telling Pelicans fans that they should be actually excited about what Brandon Ingram and Zion did, because they did that playing 2.5 on 5 the whole season. Yes. And they still average 27 and 25. Like, if you give these guys somebody where they just have to, the defense can't completely leave them open, and they have to at least look at them, then what does this offense look like then?
Right, and this is where I got crushed, and I'm going to go to Elliot and Raph here in a second. But this is where I got crushed, and I couldn't understand why I was getting so much backlash. But I want Zion at the 5. Does that mean I need Zion at the 5? No. That means Zion is my 5 technically. You just switch 1 through 5 and go from there. You had Steven Adams and Derek Favors closing out games next to Zion in the last 2 years. Does that make any sense? It makes zero sense. Elliot, or let's, you know what? I'm gonna start with Raph, then go to Elliot.
Yeah. No.
Go.
I'm 100% with you on that, right? Zion's never going to be that paint protector that you're looking for. That's never going to be his case. What I saw from Trey in the summer league is he kind of has a little bit of that to him as well. And I think what we're missing here is, I think this could be a fluid thing, depending on the matchups, depending on the night. Because I think there's going to be games where Jackson closes out the game because of his ability to switch, play perimeter D, and to lock down the paint. So this roster already, in comparison to last roster, has more options, right?
Last year, Jackson takes another leap. If Jackson,
I'm about to say, apparently Jackson pulling up from the timeline.
Yeah.
Can he just hit a 15-footer first?
That's all. Can we just hit a little? Yeah,
right. But that was another thing that pissed me off. I'm going to hear Elliot here in a second. That Stan Van Gundy would never make an adjustment and try Jackson Hayes to close out a game last year. Just try it. You know, Elliot. You know, that's why he was so close-minded. But Elliot, go ahead.
I totally interrupted you, Raph. So if there's anything you want to interrupt me for now, you go for it.
No, man. 100%. Jackson, I'm a Nola and I'm a Jackson Hive guy, so I had to get my 2 cents in. But go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. So what I'm thinking for a closing lineup, obviously, I mean, even when we talked about the starters, it's just there's so much flexibility, right? So much flexibility with ways you can close out games, ways you can start games, ways you can switch rotations. Obviously, I think it's obvious that there's 3 that you want in a closing lineup to me. It's Devontae, it's BI, and it's Zion, because Devontae's incredible in the clutch. Zion's unstoppable. BI's going to hit a shot, right? And then it comes down to who you want to close. If you want Zion to be your 5, you can put Trey in. If you want Na to be your 2, you can put him in. And I mean, like you said, it's just guys who can make shots around Zion. Devontae, because he's clutch, going to be a negative defensively, which is not great late. Na, who is great on both ends. BI, who can hopefully take a leap on the defensive end. And I really, really, really think that Willie Green is going to get an incredible level of buy-in from him and Zion defensively this year. I really do. I'm so high on Willie Green. It's insane. But I like the idea of Jackson closing too, because I mean, if you have Zion, well, hopefully in shape, Jackson, BI, Devontae, and Na, you can just get out and go. Like, you can just fly. And we talked, there was a specific lineup that had that last year. I can't remember what it was.
It was the death lineup. I called it the death lineup. Right. It was my favorite. It was the speed. It was Kyra, Hart, Zion, Na, and
Najee, BI, Jackson.
Najee, or in BI.
Jackson. I don't know.
I forget what it was.
Yeah, me too.
You were such a player. I don't even know.
But in essence, the three mainstays to me will be Devontae, BI, and Zion. And, obviously, like I said, flexibility will be important here. It depends on your matchups, all that. If you trust Devontae defensively late in the games, if you want, a last second shot, Devontae's a guy you might lean on instead of BI, instead of Zion, because he's a shot maker.
He's shown it. Yeah.
He is.
Yeah.
Just a little bit, not to interrupt you, Ellie, but just you were talking about Jackson. I think I kind of lean and I kind of like Jackson as the 5 to kind of close things out, just because I think he can kind of give a little bit of the Rudy Gobert kind of upgrade defensively. And what I mean by that is that Jazz defenders play a lot more pressure defense because they know they have somebody behind them to kind of close, clean up any kind of mistakes they have. And we saw with Jackson Hayes' 5-block game that like he'll go for those. And now he's starting to kind of put it together where he doesn't jump for everything. He doesn't like foul every single time. And we saw that 5-block game that he's there and can change a game defensively. And so I think like in really like clutch times and really times where you need to have not only great offense, but you might need to get a stop or two here and there. I think that having Jackson on the floor and having him kind of patrol the paint and be around, depending, like Raph said, flexibility, obviously, if they have a small ball 5, then you make those changes. But if there's a big out there, then you would, if you have Jackson out there, maybe those perimeter defenders may feel a little more comfortable pushing up and playing more pressure defense, knowing that Jackson Hayes is back there, as opposed to kind of having like we had last year where people were just like in between playing. If they, you had Steven Adams there, so he's not really a shot contest person or block. So you couldn't really post up, you couldn't really pressure too much because if they got past you, it was pretty much a bucket.
2 points.
So I think Jackson could kind of fix a lot of that.
And Jackson, comparing him to a Gobert role like that, he's 10 times the athlete that Gobert is.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
10 times.
Exactly.
Yeah. And to your point, Garrick, you saw it and I think we all saw it, the progression he made, right? I think he went through that stretch where he got benched, he got a couple of DMPs. Mm-hmm. He really became disciplined on the defensive end, right? Every time like Jackson come in 2 quick fouls and he's out, right? Mm-hmm. That didn't really happen later in the year. And you could kind of tell he really worked on that. And, I hope the whole investigation is past him and we can like kind of move forward because I do think he could have gotten those summer league minutes and been really beneficial to him.
Oh my God!
I think you would have dominated summer. You would have dominated summer league.
Right, that team would have been incredible, man.
Right,
oh,
and like so that hurts. But like from what we've heard from him showing up in Nashville, and the great thing about Jackson since this happened, he hasn't said a word. Right, he's just kind of like gone about his business. Mm-hmm. Seems like he's like just maybe has a clear head now. Like let's move forward.
No Instagram videos. No Instagram videos.
Love exactly, which is completely foreign to all of us.
Right. So, we've heard really good things from Nashville. So, moving forward, and it's so good to talk about exciting things. Like we're not. I'm gonna start off. We'll start with we'll go to Garrick, then we'll go to Raph and Elliot. Who you're most excited about, and it's not a player. It's Willie Green, and I think that, as I think you said it, Elliot, you're going to see a buy-in from this team. It means something to have a coach. You got to have a leader. You got to have a guy. Now, Willie Green's 39 years old, but he's won, right? He's played with some of the best players. He's coached some of the best players. You hear nothing but great things about him. Stan Van Gundy was toxic. He didn't know how to communicate. He didn't know how to get the best out of his players, and that clearly showed. It looked like Brandon Ingram quit 2 weeks into the season. It's probably same with Zion. With Willie Green, it kind of showed in the summer league, and then it's moving forward, right? Progression, and you hear, I think 17 people showed up in Nashville, really good workouts, and like carry that momentum, right? I want to talk more about that guy, right? Willie Green being a positive for this franchise, maybe finally getting a head coach that is good, right? And respect, like Alvin Gentry was great with players and everything like that, but he just mailed it in defensively. Willie Green, I think, will focus both offensively and defensively. And Garrick, I want to hear your thoughts on who you're most excited about for this upcoming season.
Yeah, just absolutely on Willie Green, man. I think, having a coach that has been in the trenches, and has been on, been on the court and things like that will go a long way with communicating. And then also he's been in the dog days of the Warriors franchise when they were going through their turmoil and the things with Kevin Durant and Draymond. So he has a little bit of crisis management under his belt. So I think that that's going to help a lot too. But going into this season, man, I'm sorry, Raph, I got to do it.
I know you're gonna do it. It's all right.
I'm excited about No, man. And I know we talk about the jump that he can make, and I know we talk about, all of these things that on the court, the things that, that he's going to bring in, and things that we hope that he's worked on, his turnovers and things like that. But I'm looking forward to this kind of rallying leader that he's becoming. And I think that that's going to be really, really big in terms of both, the team's on-court performance, but kind of getting that culture together and everything. You got to remember that Nola, Jackson, and Zion were the rooks together. They were the guys who all hung up together. They were at the Saints game. After they got drafted, they were at the Saints game together. They've been pictured hanging out and tweeting each other in Instagram videos. But I think that Nola is the leader, the vocal leader, as well as the presence leader of the team. Now, of course, Zion and Brandon Ingram are your best players, but we heard with the old guy, and congrats on the retirement, of what he used to say about this being such a quiet team, and quiet. They had quiet dinners and stuff like that. I think that you saw kind of with his little serenading of the karaoke during the thing, that he has a little bit of a personality. Like he has a welcoming kind of rally around me personality, and I think that that's going to do a lot for when the team actually gets together. It's been a crazy offseason. Everybody's everywhere. COVID protocols, things are going on. I think once the team kind of locks in, get a couple games under their belt, and kind of establishes himself as the backcourt leader, as the guard going forward, kind of not looking over his shoulder anymore, not having to worry about who's going to be starting over him. Whether we saw Stan kind of put him to the side and not play him, and then we saw Nick Nurse not play him, start Corey Joseph in the Olympics. And so I think that now that he kind of has this, like, look, everybody has bought into, you are our backcourt guy. I am really looking forward to that confidence being instilled into Nola and to see what that jump brings, because I really think, as a starter, we've seen him give Kawhi and Paul George 37 and 30 points here and 25 points there. And as a starter, he averaged 20 points a game. I think if you give him that role as a full-time starter without having to worry about being benched or being pulled because of politics or whatever it is, and I think Willie Green is not going to have a lot of that. Yeah. I think I'm really excited, and I think I'm a hot take it. I think Nola might be knocking on the door of an all-star berth.
Wow.
Yeah. 20, 22, 23 point per game scorer. If the Pelicans stay healthy as a 4-5 seed around there, if they stay healthy, and this team, as we saw with all this talent around, I think Nola will be the guy to kind of make that jump. And if he's not an all-star, he's going to be that guy who maybe next year, or if things kind of were a little bit different, he would be in that kind of category.
I was prepared for him to say hot take and say most improved player.
That's not a hot take. Everyone says that.
All stars, like,
Ralph, go ahead.
Say what I said, man.
Hey, listen, my brother took my player. I absolutely think Nola's going to have a monster year as well. But a person I would say I'm very looking forward to it, Ellie and I just talked about it, Jackson Hayes. Hopefully he can put this arm behind him, because I don't think what people are really kind of digesting the player Jackson was turning into. When he came back from being bitches, there were games where he was the best player on the floor. Like, he was locking down the paint. We haven't had that since, that one guy who played here for quite some time, except Jackson's willing to play the 5. He's willing to play the 4. He's got the ability to play the 4. You saw him stretch and be able to contain on the perimeter. So if you got a guy who's locking down the paint, and a guy who can switch at the end of games, and a guy who's shooting free throws at 75, 80%, and who's starting to extend away from the basket, like, that's a player, and he's 21. Like, that's a player who's like, whoa. And so to your point earlier, I think Willie Green coming over and having DeAndre Ayton before this, he's going to see Jackson Hayes and say, you might be better than him, because athletically, I think he is. And the way that he can handle the ball, there was a possession I remember last year when he went full court. He went court to. I said, "Excuse me, Jackson pass, Jackson
No,
bucket."
sir.
Okay, fives don't do that in the NBA unless you're Giannis, right? They just don't do that. And so, as he grows in his development, his game, the sky's the limit. Honestly, I'm happy that we didn't extend JB without him playing a minute because we learned from our mistakes.
It's crazy how that works.
I love it we did because it buys Jackson one more year to gain a little weight, to get a little bit more experience on his belt, so that next year I think he's your starting five.
And you can say, like, if Jackson becomes the starting five and you feel comfortable with like a Billy or getting somebody else who's just in that, secondary five role, and you can
soak up
save
some of the big man minutes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, Willie's on a really cheap deal for good reason. Billy, I guess. Sorry.
Yeah.
But
Billy Hustle.
I totally agree with both of you. I maybe not the all-star thing with Nah, but not yet. Not yet.
I got you.
Okay, maybe I'll get there. But I completely agree. Jackson, Nah, very excited to see the leap they take. And I'm going to take the other easy young guy to be excited about is Trey Murphy, man.
Great.
I mean, what did we see in the summer league? Not only is he incredibly talented, not only is he savvy in terms of defense and when to put up shots, how to get open, moving off ball. The dude is great in an interview. He's mature. He said, I want to prove that I'm coachable. And as a kid who's 21 coming out and saying that, joining a team that has already Zion, B.I., Jackson, Nah, all these other talented guys, Devontae. I mean, I think he's so incredibly self-aware. Like, you just don't get that from 21-year-olds. You just don't. I mean, he transferred from Rice to get better at what he wasn't good at Virginia. He wanted to get better defensively. I mean, on top of that, do you guys know how tall he was when he graduated high school by chance?
Was he 6'4"?
Yeah, I heard he was what, 6'5"? Yeah,
6'5", and he's 6'9" now, and he's 21, so he could still grow a little bit more. Yeah. So I mean, and he puts a little bit more weight on his frame. I feel like there's going to be plays where we're just like, holy shit, that guy's a rookie. Like I really firmly believe that. And secondarily, Trey's my top one, but Devontae Graham, you look up his highlight tape, it's like 90% 3-pointers.
Yep.
Like, this team just has not had that. And I really think Devontae is going to have an incredible impact on this offense that we just haven't seen in the last 2-3 years.
Yeah. And I want to go off of a hot take here, but I do think that Herb Jones jumps Josh Hart in the rotation a week or two into the season.
A week or two into the season?
Okay.
Nope.
Going that quick. I don't think Josh Hart is much of a – I think he's going down the totem pole. And I think like his contract's so easily movable, like just going to call that out.
We're competing for hot takes now.
Call that right now. Call that right now. Moving forward, though, a couple more things before we wrap it up. Let's talk about the face of the franchise. It's Brandon Ingram. We all know what he is, right? He's a quiet kid, but he's a kid, and from what we've heard, he works his ass off. He's always in the gym. He's just a nice. He's in my opinion, he's a star, and he's not very high maintenance, right? He just shows up, does what he does, and like that's just who Brandon Ingram is. But at the end of the day, if you're going to be a max player, you're going to be a face of a franchise, you got to bring it defensively. I know what he can do offensively. I think he's one of the maybe a top 10, 15 offensive player in this league right now. And I think under Willie Green, he'll move into a top 10 player because offensively, he's really good. He needs to be really good at off-ball movement, right? Whether it be down screens with Zion, all that different kind of stuff. And I think Willie Green's going to teach him that, kind of like the Steph Curry, Klay Thompson type, right? Klay Thompson's deadly because he's so great off the ball, reading screens and such, right? And I think Willie Green and that coaching staff are going to kind of take Brandon Ingram to that next level. But this team's going to be good. And I mean good. Like 5-6 seed, what they should be. Ingram has to take a step defensively. I don't care who you are. If you've played basketball, you don't have to be talented to play defense. You got to have a little bit of heart and a little bit of a brain. Okay, right? You got to get in the stance. You got to understand where the ball is, move with the basketball, all that different kind of stuff. Brandon Ingram's 6'9" with length, and he's quick. Okay? So, like, at some point, he's got to make it a priority that I'm going to get better defensively. And what was so disappointing about Brandon Ingram last year is that in the press conference, or maybe it was his exit presser before Stan Van Gundy got here, he said he was going to work defensively. Clearly he didn't. Or he quit on Stan Van Gundy. I don't either or. But this year, I'm going to start with you, Raph. I need to see Brandon Ingram take a step defensively because the kid's going to average 25 a night. I already know he's a knock down 38 to 40% from deep. He's going to be an 85+% free throw shooter. He's got to take it to the next level defensively.
Absolutely. I don't think this team goes anywhere if Zion and BI don't take that next step. And I think every Pels fan can agree. To your point with Willie Green, what I saw with what he was able to cultivate in such a short time in Summer League, the guy has go back to David Griffin's gift of gab. He has a presence to him, right? Like people buy into what he's saying. They're understanding what he's doing. It's much different. You as a coach, you should know it's much different to play for a coach than, hey, I want to win for that coach. Like, hey, I'm bought into that coach. Hey, we're riding and dying. Like we take losses personally. And so when you're in the thick of things in practice, you got to police yourself a little bit. Like, hey, that's not going to be good enough, BI. And I think the players around us this year, in terms of we actually have veterans that contribute and mean something when they say things, just like when we got James Johnson, having those guys at practice to say, BI, you know you're better than that. You can't let that go now because in the game you're going to let it go. I think that's going to mean a lot to it as well. To your point, he has all the tools. It's different to look at folks like Trae Young or like Luka Doncic who might be limited in terms of how good they can be defensively. BI has no excuse for why he should not be good defensively. People ain't backing you down on the block at 6'9". Like that's not today's game. You just got to be able to shuffle your feet and not fall asleep, right? And so if you've got people buying into a system, and if you're the one or if Zion's the one always messing up or always falling asleep or always giving back to you, I don't think that's going to fly anymore. I just think you have a better group around you to help say, hey, let's hold each other accountable so that we all get to that next level.
Elliot, or Garrett, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that Griff has done really well this season is constructed this team to kind of put the pressure on Zion and Brandon Ingram. This is no longer, as far as we can tell from the additions of Trey Murphy and Jonas and Devontae, this is no longer a completely dependent on Brandon Ingram and Zion to be competitive type of team. It's no longer that. It's more of we have more, like you say, flexible options, more available options. And so what this means is that this team will only go as far as Brandon Ingram and Zion take them. And this means that Brandon Ingram has to be better defensively. And the same goes for Zion as well. They have to come back in and they have to be bought in defensively because they have players around them who are bought in defensively. You have Najee, you have Dede, you have Josh Hart, you have players Jackson Hayes, you have players who are going to be and we saw it in Summer League, who are going to compete and be doggish defensively. And so it's going to be more glaring if Zion is getting beat on back cuts, if Brandon Ingram is giving up halfway through the play or is ball watching. It's going to be a lot more obvious to see that. And so I think that Brandon Ingram, and we know that this is a guy who the season before last, when Gentry was here and he had his most improved player of the year season and he had his all-star season, we saw that this is a guy who can light it up and who can literally win games and change games offensively, by his own when Zion was out. Now that you have a more complete roster around you, you have a new coach that's bought in. It has to come upon the stars. Everybody talks about, we need Dame, we should trade for this star, this superstar. You have a superstar and at least an all-star on your team. They have to be better. They have to accept the charge of being better defensively and carrying this team to where they think that there should be. The reason the Pelicans aren't good is because our players those star players don't play defense. They weren't invested and involved in defense. And so I think, what Griff has done has built this team to say, okay, you guys have to be better. And I'm not saying Griff is saying this, but I'm looking at it as you guys have to be better, and you have to be the reason that we go. We have supplemental players. It's on you now.
And Elliot, before I get to your point, when we say better defensively, do I mean all NBA defense?
Absolutely not. No, absolutely
not.
Well,
Zion said he's winning Defensive Player of the Year, so
I just
don't be that.
I just need you to be average. Right now, they are below average. I need you to be average. Because guess what? Both of those kids, how many teams in this league, Elliot, I want to get your point, but how many teams in this league can go into a game and be like, my top two guys are going to drop 55 on you every single
game?
You know? And like,
Very
so
few.
like, just be average defensively. Elliot, go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So I have 4 points when it comes to this.
Ooh, okay.
For Brandon Ingram, reasons I believe he's going to get better is, well, Raph hit one. You got vets who are going to hold this guy accountable. And, Garrett Temple, I really think he's in a position to come in and influence this team from an IQ perspective and from a leadership perspective. He might not be in the rotation a ton, but, I mean, there's a reason he led one of those dinners and said, hey, nah, your turn,
Yeah.
And I think Nah is in a position where he's been around the team long enough to feel like he can step up and say something in that regard as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard a lot about Devontae in terms of his leadership, that it's really positive, that he's going to step in and be a leader with this team. And then you got Sato. And I think these guys just genuinely, even the new guys, really want to invest. Like Sato in these interviews that we've seen from this Czech Republic guy.
Random.
Yeah, I'm super random. He's just like, Sato's like ride or die Pelican already. I haven't even played a minute. So I love that. Second point, Stan Van Gundy's gone. Like we talked about this on one of our roundtables, Justin. I think it was with you and Chris and Jesse had to bounce, but I really think part of the reason he wasn't as good defensively last year was because of rebelliousness. It was just another fuck you, Yeah. I really believe that because Stan Van Gundy wanted them to be better defensively. They ultimately got better, but BI was just not doing it. Third point, I guess that's third point is Willie Green, man. Like to continue to I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but Green, he led the Suns defense these last 2 years, led it this last year. They were top 10, top 8 in like every major statistical category. And he was a defensive focused player when he was in the league and cultivate buy-in. Golly, this team needs a guy to cultivate buy-in. And with Willie, it was Alvin Gentry and an overcorrection to Stan Van Gundy. And I think Willie's the perfect combination of, man, I want to win for this guy, and man, I respect this guy. Like if he says, I need this from you, I got it, coach. I'm going to do it because I want to do it for you and because I want to do it for my team, because I want to win. And lastly, they got guys who are going to take the load off of him offensively, off him and Zion. Devontae is going to fill it up. Jonas can get a bucket whenever he needs to. You're getting Trey off the bench, who hopefully will be a pretty solid spot up shooter. Najee's evolved offensively. I mean, I really think, especially Devontae and Jonas are the big pieces here when I'm talking about their offense.
Do you remember the starting lineup? Can you imagine Zion and Brandon Ingram every single game had to be like, who else is getting their own shot with Eric Bledsoe, Lonzo, and Steven Adams out there? And every single game they had to deal with that. Yeah. Every single game, other than the games that Nah played, obviously, but like every single game. So yeah,
and
absolutely.
Jamel McMillan was on the pod, on my pod. I don't know, at the beginning of last season. And what he said was, he wrapped it up. Basically, the offense for the entire year is everything is hard. Everything is
supposed to be hard.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like in terms of shot creation and stuff like that. Yeah. It was just difficult. They were not making it easy on themselves. And I think that was an incredibly succinct, poignant way to put it. And it's true.
But Elliot,
and they still average 27 and 20.
Right.
Go ahead.
The problem, and like Elliot, you remember this, and I don't know if y'all saw, like my name got dragged like 3 times, especially with that David Fisher guy. But what's good?
Join the club, bro. Everybody gets dragged.
Listen. You can. I've coached this game for 8 years. Stats or whatever. Okay, I think stats are very misleading. Every single time someone would tell me, "Well, we're 8th in efficiency and this in pace and all this bullshit." We didn't do shit offensively last year. You had 2 incredible top 10, 15 scores in the league. Yep. That's why we were somewhat okay. Okay, this year you're now implementing in Willie Green, and you saw in the summer league they averaged 80-something points a game, which is like highest in Vegas in the summer league. You're going to start seeing more off-ball movement and more easier shots. I can count on one hand, I think it happened 4 times, a simple down screen on the left left-hand side of the court for Zion and Brandon Ingram. Just a simple down screen. Zion just go down screen for Brandon. Brandon come off and then get on the left-hand side. Very simple basketball. And then overload the right side. It happened 4 times.
Stuff that you learn in bitty basketball.
Yeah. No, I also think, and I know this is a hot topic, but I also think the Lonzo thing is addition by subtraction. Yes, Lonzo was great from 3, but it was the shots that he didn't take. Like, he would get to the lane and like pass it to half court. He'd be like, Lonzo, what are you doing? Just shoot the ball. You're not gonna have that problem with Devontae, because if the bucket is available, he is getting the bucket, right? You're not having that problem. Same thing with Steven Adams. You drive to the lane, give him an easy shot. He's not looking for the ball. He's turning around looking for the rebound. You're not going to have that problem again. And so not only those 2 things that are open off the offense, to your point, there was just no creativity in the offense at all. It was Zion, go get a bucket. B.I., now your turn. Let's figure it out. That was the offense.
And it was forced. Like, Van Gundy made them do half-court offense, and they didn't do the half-court offense. Like, they didn't run when they could.
I only needed to see one play in the summer league, and I'm like, oh, it's going to be already better. It was Ellie, you might have to help me out here. It was the sideline. It was a sideline out of bounds. I think it was against the Clippers when we needed a bucket. It was late in the game. There's like we were down 1 or 2. It happened like the goaltending thing happened or whatever.
Oh, with Trey Murphy putting it back.
Yeah.
So we all knew that team, right? It was either you're going to give it to Najee or you're going to give it to Trey Murphy, right? Or Kyra. That was like Willie Green drew up a play for Herb Jones to it was a Draymond play, right? It was a down screen, catches it around the junction. Fakes the handoff, takes it down the left-hand side, gets the rim, and I think Trey Murphy tips it in, right, for the win.
Guys, I was like, holy shit, they can actually run basketball plays.
That's the only thing I need to see where, hey, it was creativity 1, and 2, it was to somebody that no one thought it was going to go to. It was something like a Sean Payton kind of thing, right, where like that's why they're so creative and good. It's like you don't know who to game plan for. That situation just showed me everything I need to know about Willie Green. Is that he's not going to just be Stan Van Gundy, who's just Stan Van Gundy's just a terrible coach.
I have something to say.
He's just bad. Bad. Go ahead.
It permeates trust throughout the team.
Yes. Very good point.
Josh Hart said it at the end of last year in the press conference. He said, I thought that I had the ability to take shots, but if anyone took shots outside of B.I. and Zion, we got mad at it. And it's like, you need those guys to develop their games. Like, you need those guys to be comfortable in their own role. The other part of that is they shouldn't have to play half court. With the athletes you have on your team, you should be able to get stops and then be in transition. Like, that's where you have an advantage over 99% of the NBA. The guys that you got at the 4 and the 5, nobody can run and jump with. And so you got to get stops to get those guys easier buckets, which we didn't do either. So when you combine all of that, the inability to shoot in the half court, the inability to be creative in half court, the inability to get on fast breaks, that's ends you out of the play-in tournament.
And just to continue to wax poetically with Elliot about Willie Green, I think something that you'll something else that's a little different that you'll see, which will continue to kind of bolster the trust of the team, is that things like when Stan benched Nola after Eric Bledsoe said that he wasn't paying attention. Benched Najee after Najee scored like 15 points in the game, and then Eric Bledsoe comes out and says, I wasn't paying attention in the huddle. And then Eric Bledsoe is starting next season after Stan told us that minutes would be earned. But that's neither here nor there. But those type of things, like, I don't think Willie Green will have those type of issues. And part of what you were saying about like coming up with plays and having a player in the middle of the floor and going to players that you don't expect, that comes from having a coach that played basketball. And I know it seems like a very minute detail, but there are things and there is vernacular and there is jargon that you have among players. And Justin, as a coach, I know you understand this, that like the way that you can connect to a player, being a former player or at least being somebody who has played basketball, those type of things you can connect on a different level than somebody who just hasn't. And, it's not Stan Van Gundy's fault, but it's just something that Willie Green can bring to the table that Stan just didn't have.
Right. And you just nailed it on the head right there. I completely agree. And the last thing I want to make this before we sign off is that I think Willie Green, Stan Van Gundy, as we talked about, his half court is very robotic. Right, it was just like you go here, you go there. Willie Green will be implementing more of a kind of a organized
dynamic,
right,
dynamic.
Right. So like that's why the Warriors. I was talking about Jamel too. Ellie is like that's why the Warriors are impossible to game plan for because it was just organized chaos. It was reading screens. It was, slipping screens. That's why Draymond and Clay and Curry, I mean, they're great players, but that's why they just flow so well, is because they play off of each other. Stan wanted to control every single little asset or facet of the game. And that's why, at the end of the game, they shit the bed every time. Like, let's never forget the whole Indiana Pacers up 6 20 seconds left when we lost the game. I know, right?
It's Friday at noon, bro. Why you trying to ruin the day?
Being positive here. No, this was fun, guys. Thanks for first off, y'all at Pels Pod and also at Pelicans Plus. They do a great job covering the team. That's Raph Garrick and then Elliot Clough. Can't thank y'all enough. Once again, Friday at 12 joining me. That's awesome. We got Pelicans basketball 9 days away from preseason basketball.
Yes,
big press conference Monday. We can all agree.
Let's go.
My goodness, I might have to go get some wings or something and just like sit and watch Twitter all day.
Yeah, it's gonna be wild. So Raph Garrick, Elliot Clough. Yeah, thanks for joining us. Thanks. Y'all have a great weekend.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely who dat as always. And see y'all on Monday. Thanks, guys. Can't thank y'all enough, guys.